On effective health checks, migrating the risk of project failure. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the 34th floor, or 35th floor actually, which is a very good feedback for the presenter, because the more heads looking outside, the more bored you are. So I try to avoid that. We're past the lunch break, so everybody should be pumped, as I am, so I'm looking forward to that. So before we start, I'm going to talk about project health checks today, and it's a topic that sometimes might be perceived as an audit or something where when a project is in trouble already that you might apply. So what I'm going to talk about today is to give you some practical templates and advice how to run those kind of health checks, as well as how effectively you can use a structured method to really endeavor potential weaknesses in a project. But before I come to that, I would like to start with a small little story that developed in my head over the last couple of weeks. And you might say, look, this guy is so experienced, he worked all over the world, and now he's coming up with a story developing last couple of weeks. However, I just recently came back last Sunday from a very long trip in the US. I did a very long trail. It's like a dream of the life it was for me, the John Muir Trail in the western part of the US. And that trail is like a 250-mile hike. Within 3 weeks, more than 300 kilometers, you walk up twice the height of Mount Everest during that trail. So it was something that has developed over the last 24 years in my head, since I've seen this sign, John Muir Trail, 211 miles down to Mount Whitney. So if you look at this kind of hike as a project, you start with the investment, and that's how we call it at Virgin, an investment phase, where the idea develops and where you start talking to stakeholders whether you would buy in. So I was muscling my wife, thank you for that, muscling my wife for the last couple of years to be able to plan for that trip. So that's how it all started. So I planned it, I understood, who I might go with and who would be able to walk with me for that trail and be able for and ready for that kind of challenge. So you plan very precisely, as there is a hike that takes you to the outer wilderness, where it at least takes you 20 miles to break out of that trail. There's nobody around you. You have to take care of your food. There are bears around you, so you have to take bear canisters where the food comes in. You have to organize your resupply points as you go along. So it was a long planning period for about a year until I was able to walk. So if you look at the delivery of that, and that's now I'm coming to the point to make a long story short. When you come to the delivery of that, and you're in the middle of that hike, guess what you're doing the whole time, every single minute. You're constantly checking your health. And it's not just the health of your personal health, whether something is aching, something is stitching. You're also checking your resources all the time. You're always checking the weather, right? Whether something comes up that you need to focus on while you're in the middle of the path and the lightning would strike you immediately. You are always try to be ahead of the game and talk to people that come the way to you and ask them, is anything particular that I should know in the next 10 miles coming up? So you are constantly listening to yourself, and you are constantly looking with a helicopter view, so to speak, on the hike you're doing, on yourself, on your resources that you have, so that the likelihood of failure is mitigated. So the question to you guys is, and now we're coming to the project health checks, what I'm seeing in my 20 years experience, we don't do that in projects. We plan it, and then during delivery, we might do enhanced milestone sign-offs, and we have our steering groups, and we have our communication. Why not do health checks during the project prior a project is on risk and is already in trouble? So that's what this presentation is about, to not perceive health checks as an audit and something that you would do when the project is in failure or in trouble, that you would do proactively to help the project manager, to help the sponsors, to help the entire organization to make sure that the likelihood that this project is going to fail is mitigated. So if we look at what we're going through today, I will talk about how health checks are embedded in the overall project governance, how I understand it. There might be different approaches, but how does it fit in? What are the benefits of using health checks? What are different approaches? And then we're really diving into a pragmatic view into project health checks, looking at quick assessments, mini health checks, and full health checks, as well as what I would like to do at the end is if we've got a volunteer that has a project that we might quick assess at the moment, to really use a template that we are using and that I've used in the past 3-digit times already, and to see, just to get you guys a feeling what it means to conduct a project health check. So in an overall governance structure, when you think around governance as control and transparency, that's what project governance for me is all about, right? To control your project from the inside of the project as well as from the outside, plus to have the visibility and transparency around project progress beside a regular status report where you might see green, yellow, red, and yesterday we talked about pink, amber, and orange colors. How does health checks fit in? So we have overall status reporting. Everybody knows that. We just talked about one-click status reporting. We've got your steering groups where you provide a more detailed visibility on status reporting with a different view potentially. You might have departmental control groups where when you lead a business project with IT components, you might just look at the IT department and give the managers of IT maybe a different message so that they can resolve some things before talking to the business. You might have gates beside certain phases. You might use quality gates as something that you use during delivery, so like enhanced milestones that you sign off. And then there is the health check, which is another component or another method, another approach to assess your project status and provide even more transparency in a structured approach. So that's how I see health checks would fit in the overall governance, in the overall project governance. So why should we check project health? First of all, if you do it right, it's a comprehensive analysis of the project. And it's a reverse checklist, right? So if you got checklists to go from planning into delivery and everything needs to be ticked, this is the reversed view, whether that's some areas are still the case. Delivery phases might be very long from a timing perspective, right? So things that you ticked in the box between planning and delivery might have changed already, right? So you reassess those kind of areas. You get an instant summary of current situations. So the health checks I'm going to look at today and show you today, those are health checks that you can do within a day if you're familiar with the project and with the environment. And I've seen health checks approaches from other companies that, they come in with a truckload of resources and assess your project 6 or 7 weeks long, and what you see at the end is a 20-slide presentation. So this gives you an instant summary of your project. You identify weaknesses, or how you should call it, or how we would call it in Queensland is areas of improvement, and generate a package of measures that you identify during the health check that you should address post-health check. And yesterday we learned in the presentation around troubled projects, focus on the three key things. Don't focus on everything that you endeavor, focus on the key 3 things, and the other stuff might be resolved because you have focused on those 3 things, or will be resolved by the team because they understand, oh, we're getting better now, so let's look at this, look at that, and a momentum is being generated. You might even be able, within that health check, and the health check methods I'm going to show you, they address that, to identify best practices. If something is really done extraordinarily well in that project that as a PMO manager or as a portfolio manager you might want to have reused in other projects. With that health check, you're able to identify that while doing the health check and take that knowledge asset, put it in whatever kind of knowledge management system or directory structure you might have for that, or in your own personal toolbox in your F drive on your USB stick, and secure that for later use for other projects. So it's not just around weaknesses and areas of improvement, it's also to identify very good things that have been done maybe the first time or very well in that particular project. What you would also identify is areas of improvement personally for the project manager. So competence. So if you see that there is a weakness in communication for whatever reason, right? Whether he has a communication plan but he doesn't execute it, there might be an area of improvement of that project manager side of things to improve his way of communicating. Maybe he's not the strong communicator. Maybe he's an engineer, technical guy thrown into that role, does all the other stuff right, but communication, weak stuff. And you send him on a training course for 5 days to learn more about communication and then apply it later on. That could be a measure coming out of that. And the management oversight over the project governance is another reason why to do that. So what are the benefits? On some of them I've touched already, but the key thing is that both the project manager as well as the sponsor do get a different view on the health and the status, so to speak, of that project. And it's always the question whether you do the health check self-conducted, so you as a project manager, you use the template, you use the approach to do your own health check, or you have somebody from the outside, and I'm not talking outside the company, but outside your own view. You might not see, how do you call it? You might not see the forest because of the trees or something like that. Yeah, you have that saying? So I don't know whether you guys have done the awareness test sometimes. There is like an awareness test outside where you look at how many times people throw their ball to each other, and while they're doing that, a big gorilla walks aside, and because you're so focused on these passing things, you don't see the gorilla. It's obvious. If somebody tells you there's the gorilla, oh yeah, there was the gorilla, how did I miss that? Yeah, so go to YouTube and check awareness test. Go for awareness test, and you see that it was an advertisement that has been used by some of the government, US government, I guess. So the project manager might not see those weak areas because he's so focused on his delivery. So if somebody from the outside comes in and asks those questions, and what about change control? Do you have a process? Yes, I do. Show me your change, your changes. Oh, I don't have them. Why don't you have them? Yeah, because there weren't any changes. Yeah, but your project runs for a year. No changes? Yeah. So that's really something, and then you can dive into more why those changes have not been addressed, because the project manager has some fear to address them to the steering group, ask for approval, whatever the reason might be. Right? So if somebody else comes in, he can ask those questions that the project manager probably wouldn't ask for whatever reason. Yeah. So that's one of the key benefits. The others you can read on the slide. So 3 methods that I have used, as I said, heaps of times in my past, for different purposes and with different approaches. So I'm going to show you those things today. One is like a quick assessment. 15 questions in critical areas, and whether you have confidence or not between 0 and 10. Then we've got a mini health check, something that is 40 questions. You can do it in 1 hour, 1.5 hours. You can do it on your own. You can do it with your portfolio manager or somebody from the outside, as well as a full health check, which takes like 3 to 4 hours and has got around 100, 120 and 130 questions. And the recommendation is the big one. That's really the one when it comes to the crunch, to have this moderated, and the small one and the super small one is something that you can do on your own. So how does this quick assessment look like? Some sample question here, whether the delivery team understand what needs to be delivered and when. And it's up to you to call, yeah, it's a 0, I don't have no confidence, so the delivery team, they don't know what they need to deliver. Or you say my confidence is pretty high, 7 to 8, yeah, and you just give a score. So that's at the end, by asking or by answering those 10 to 15 questions, whatever you come up with, you get a solid view on, whether green dominates or whether the red stuff dominates. And you have some areas, that you already can focus on. If you're everything is well, beside this, that the delivery team doesn't understand what they need to deliver. So you might have the swing inside this tree rather on the branch, yeah, is that this might still look very good, but you've got some area that you can really focus on to make sure that the delivery team will understand or has to understand what they need to deliver at the end, whatever the reason might be for that case. So that's a quick thing, and if the red dominates, you would probably use those other methods to drill in more detail. But this gives you a quick overview around your project. The health check itself, this is a comprehensive thing, and it's structured in a way that if you print that, it's all Excel based. If you print that, it's all management-like, so it looks nice. It's got the cover page, has the key parameters of that project. What is the budget, time frame, people involved, blah blah blah. And the result page gives a management overview, and I'll show you that. The management overview, what has been assessed and what are the key weak areas or areas of improvement. And then you can dive into the detail in all those detail sections where the detail areas are that you need to focus on. And it's, we talked about methods just in the prior presentation. There is AIM, there is PMBOK, there is Prince2, there is RecPM, AIPM, whatever you call them, and you might have your adapted project method in your organization. So it's always, you need to adapt those health checks to your certain method. If you health check against something that is not in place in your organization, just the common sense and the best practice approach or sense might not work. So if you have like full PMBOK and you just adjusted the interfaces to your shared services like risk management or finance, you need to adapt this and acknowledge that and address that in the health check as well. So how we structured that, and I think all those streams here, they're a common sense as well, at least from a terminology perspective. We structured it around phases, so we've got initiation, planning, delivery, and closure, and some really, and that's how we call it in Germany, digital questions. So that's like yes or no, and about quality. Yeah. So when you look in these areas here that are structured according those in those stages, and you look at project organization, that's something that you identify and define in the planning stage. Work breakdown structure, right? That's on work packages. To describe work packages, that's something you do in planning, and they just get changed during delivery, triggered by change requests. If you are in delivery, you have your project start, which is basically the kickoff within and with your delivery team, going then into those processes that you use while you're in delivery. And it's not just, do you have change management, yes or no? You will see there are far more detailed questions to address specific areas, and then you go down to project closure, whether you've done your lessons learned, and business satisfaction, whether the business was happy with the project and why, and all that sort of thing. And as I said, those digital questions here are around documents and roles. So if you, for example, have like a functional description document that you need in every single project, or a signed business case, or a signed project charter, or a signed statement of work, project management plan, whatever you call that stuff, it asks for these documents, right? So you ask the question, do you have a project management plan? Has it been signed, right? Yes, yeah, okay. So you get this handed over, and of course then you need to check the quality. I mean, just having an empty project management plan that has been signed doesn't give you any value, right? So you need to really dive into that and check the quality of those documents that you get handed over, ideally prior to the actual health check that you're conducting. And the same with roles. You would ask the question, do you have a project manager appointed? Oh yes, I have one. So does he have the sufficient time to manage that project? Oh, yeah, he's still doing 80% of his time business as usual, and the other 100% he's doing that project. might not work. You would ask the question, is he skilled and trained enough to perform that role? Yeah? And all the relevant roles that you might have as a mandatory in your project method as a definition, like whether you have an accountant sitting in this project looking at all the financial stuff, whether you have stream leads that you nominate for specific streams, or whether you have a risk manager, a quality manager that is required because of the size of the project. These are the kind of roles that you would ask and identify whether they're filled and whether they're filled appropriately with the appropriate time granted. This is what these sections in the health check are for. Yeah? So how does this look like? Simple stuff. You have a questionnaire, as I said, 100, 130 questions. You would compile them based on your method. You have a 5-step rating. A 0 basically says it's not there or it's not relevant, and a 4 would say, sorry, if it's not available or not accomplished, not implemented. So you ask the question, do you have a project management plan? No, I don't. It hasn't been signed and nothing. All right, 0. So big area of improvement, especially when you're already in delivery. If you say a 3, that's how we measure that. A 3 is something where you say it's according to the standards, very good, no need to do anything. And a 4 would be a best practice. It's going even beyond what you're expecting, right? And a 2 and a 1, you see it's a little bit subjective. However, the lower the score, the higher is the area of improvement and the measures you would identify in that particular area. So the maximum that can be reached is a 4, and usually there are very, very few 4s. I've probably seen in the more than 100 health checks I've done like 5 or 10 scores that have been a 4 altogether. And these are really the best practice, the knowledge assets that are, if you've never done quality management in your organization, you just have your quality gates and all that a little bit defined in your approval criteria in your project management plan, but you really have a project that has done a super duper quality management plan and implemented quality gates to a certain extent, and you never had that kind of approach in your company. That's something you identified as a best practice. Make it generic so that it can be used in other projects as well. So that's what the 4 is actually for. So how does that look like? So that's a screenshot from that Excel sheet. You would have the initiation investment business case section here, and then around 8 questions in that area that need to be rated. Yeah? So for the business case, I can't read it even. A project initiative was set up to write a project request and business case and has been successfully completed. A business case and project request has been signed by the sponsor and by the business lead. Yeah, so that's really like outcome driven. Has this been achieved, right? And if it has been written, you're confident and it's a good quality, but it has not been signed, you would give a 2, right? So, and to get to a 3, and that's where we come to reassess and to redo that health check after a couple of weeks, it's just to get this signature to get to a 3. So that's an easy task, right? Should be an easy task. Maybe the business lead or the sponsor is not as keen to sign this anymore, but then you have different issues, I guess. Yeah. So that's how to do that stuff, right? You've got sign off whether all the prerequisite documents have been signed, and they're listed here. Yeah. And they might look different in your organization. Yeah. So you have to make your mind up based on the project method and the standards you use in your organization, what to put in there. Right, and what to assess during the health check. So, why moderate? And I gave the example already around what a moderator might ask and might see, what you as a project manager as well as a project sponsor do not see anymore. Yeah, and that's one of the key benefits, right? And it shouldn't be somebody coming out of audit or somebody that is just looking for the weakness and try to put the finger in the wound. It should be somebody that, understands, what a project manager is going through, right? And to help the project manager to identify the areas that he needs improvement for and to help him to identify that and get to a better stage. Small agenda, you find that in the presentation that is on the CD. So what are the inputs? And as I said, the project documents for me is something that you should receive prior to the health check, not in the health check, because you need to look at the quality and not at their existence. Steering group presentations. If you've done former health checks, of course, they are an input parameter as well, because the measures you have identified in your former health check is something that you would measure and test against and health check against in the second health check. Yeah? So what I usually like to do is that 6 months, the latest, 6 weeks, the latest after project kickoff, you do your first health check. And then 6 weeks later, you do your second. Of course, depending on your the project duration, those periods might be shorter. But to have a proactive health checks in a specific cycle at the very beginning, and then you would do the health checks later on if you understand that there are some weak areas in the project, but you're not able to grasp them, and you need a structured approach to identify them. But the health check is a proactive mechanism to make sure that a project is being set up correctly in the right way from the very beginning. And then the output is the assessment result, and very important, the action log, as well as the summary that you would send potentially to the sponsor and the steering group, if it's something that has been endorsed by those guys and expected by those guys. But the result as well as the action log, that's the most important outcomes out of that health check, that then in the second health check or third, how many you do, will act as an input parameter again. So how does the result view look like? You've got your key areas that you have assessed. You see, based on conditional formatting, you see whether some areas are in green, yellow, or red state. And you see on a spider graph, you see whether whether your desire, your benchmark, and that's something that you can set up, whether your benchmark is a 3, a 3.2, a 2.7, whatever. You have your benchmark here, and you've got your result laid over that, and you really see the big areas that have a big gap between your benchmark, your desire, and the assessed outcome. So it gives you, and as I said, the managers, a high-level overview, what are the weak areas in that particular project. Another advantage of doing it in that kind of structured approach is that you are able to compare projects with each other from a health perspective. You can compare if you have different portfolios and you apply that method as something that is mandatory around particular departments. You are able to compare departments, and you are able to understand whether one department is very good in one area for whatever reason. Maybe they have very good financial transparency and track everything very well because it's projects in finance. And you might have other projects in other areas that are very good in other things, and you're able to identify good knowledge assets out of all the departments based on their performance in the health checks. Plus, you are able to compare progress within your own project, because you just lay those results over each other and you see that in the area where you've been weak at the beginning, now you're improving. So it's a very good mechanism to communicate progress in your project. From a health perspective, of course, not from a delivery perspective. So what we've seen is that that kind of method is something that can be used proactively to identify areas of weakness and areas of improvement, plus when projects are in trouble, as a complementary method and approach and tool to assess the areas that need to be addressed to recover that project. So if we have, I just got the signal 5 minutes, I leave it with the help needed and with the volunteer, and we just go immediately to the Q&A. But before we do that, I inherited out of that yesterday's presentation. It's up to you to act, because I spoke a lot about the template, about the approach. If you want the template, yeah, I'm willing to send out the mini one, which is the interim or the middle one, so that you get the idea that you've got the template as Excel. You understand the formulas that are behind that. You don't have to build that on your own. You need to adapt it anyway, right? So to send out the health check template. So if you want the health check template, just give me your business card and write a T on it. If you want a call from me, yeah, for whatever reason, you need advice how to do that, you need some more insights, some more information, write a C on there. And I'm also running a blog which with some templates that I'm endeavoring outside in the world, and if you would like to see what's happening out there in Queensland and beyond in project management space, just write an A on there. So this is where it comes to you, and I'm happy to provide that and give you a jump start in that area, because last year I've done that presentation in the PMOS 2007 at the Gold Coast, and people were lining up outside the room to get this template, and I guess this is the best way how to do it. So now I think we're down to 3 or 4. So unfortunately I don't have any books to hand out, but I'm able to provide answers to your questions hopefully, so feel free. Sir.
Just want to ask, how does this get triggered? How do you know that you have to do a health check?
Two things. One is you understood that your project is in trouble, yeah, and you need a structured approach to endeavor the areas that you need to address to get the project out of the trouble, whatever the reason might be. It might be because somebody from the outside triggers that. They always see green lights in your status report, but they don't trust you for whatever reason, and they might endorse that and trigger that kind of health check. And the other thing is what I like to do is it proactively. You just do it not on your own, but you put it in your milestone plan and say, like, 6 weeks after I've done my kickoff, yeah, and the project is really rolling and everything is set up, yeah, and I have confidence that I thought about anything. Everybody knows that I need to put a risk management process in place, a change control process. You know, all the best practice you learn when you do your PMP and all the other great methods out there. But is it really, you know, that you don't have got anything, and this health check helps you to really make sure that you're at a stage where you should be, so that the likelihood of project failure is being reduced. Because my view is, if you do everything that's in those health checks based on your method, and you apply those best practices around project management, of course depending on project size and people involved and budget and all that kind of thing. You don't have to do it for a 2-month project or something. Yeah? You just do your quick assessment. But that's something where you proactively say, I would like to test myself because I don't see the forest because of the trees.
Do you approach your peers to become the moderators and all that?
Yes. Yeah, like the portfolio manager, a person you trust, yeah, that you call in, that has good project management experience. It could be even like another project manager, yeah, that is asking those relevant questions to, you know, help you to start seeing the forest. Yeah. Any other questions?
From the project manager's perspective, there's going to be a certain amount of reticence around them having external assessment of their projects. And so I'm just wondering if within Virgin you've experienced issues with conducting health checks with the PMs and how you kind of got over those hurdles to have it accepted.
We're far not there yet, so the question is how we overcome like fear around project health checks. And the answer to that is it's a journey, yeah, and it's depending on the maturity level of your organization, yeah, and whether you have a method that has been rolled out. Because one of the key hinders or barriers could be that you try to introduce health checks and somebody else tells you, what are we health checking against? We don't have a method. And without that, you wouldn't be able to health check against. You just health check against best practice that is out there and common terminology, which is a good approach. Yeah, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but to get the buy-in of people. And what I found is that the best buy-in comes, you just wait for a project in trouble. And then you apply this method, and then you identify the key areas that that are weak, that need to be worked on. You work on these areas, you provide the results, you provide the measures, yeah, you have a good management report, they understand that there is a structure behind that. The project is getting recovered, provides its deliveries. After that, that's Phantasialand or, you know, pink skies for you guys. Yeah, because then you've got the buy-in because people understand the value. Yeah?
If you find you get a better result because these checklists are available to teams and play stream to and make sure everything is in place before you get there, so you might get the result without doing that.
Yeah, so what I use in my prior company, we're not there yet with version at this stage, is that we had comprehensive checklists for those phases, yeah, where, you know, after planning you ask for a signed statement of work and a signed project management plan, and you look at the quality and you put some measures down if the quality is not where it should be, but it got signed, but you still have to work on these kind of areas. However, yeah, even if you have that and you can inherit the health check out of those checklists, or vice versa, however you do it and whatever comes first, is that this phase here, on this slide it looks similar to all the others, right? But in any project it's different. The delivery phase might be very long and you might lose sight. So what some of the questions are around the team. Do you have the right team in place with the right skills? Did you do like a training needs analysis, not for the delivery and for the outcome, but to be successful in your project? Yeah, yesterday we learned whoever was here building the mushrooms with the toothpicks and stuff like that. You always have different characters in your project team, right? And you might have the right setup here. You might have it here. But there's always change in an organization, especially during long time projects when the delivery phase is 1 or 2 years long. You need to reassess that, right? And this health check helps you, you know, to ask the same questions, not over and over again, but at a specific time when the gating has been passed and signed successfully months or even years ago. Any more questions?
Have you had to take a decision to close the project because of the health check?
Yes.
You see that helpful from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what is mentioned in the slides in one of the bullet points is especially if it's moderated, the moderator can take specific messages and outcomes out of that health check to your steering group. You might burn yourself. You might have fear to address that, right? Yesterday we learned tell the truth and nothing but the truth but the truth. Yeah? Is that if somebody else comes along and talks about it and says, look, steering group, you guys, you are not effective for whatever reason. Yeah, this has been endeavored. You don't make decisions appropriately. Yeah, if you need to make a decision, it takes you 2 months, right? And the project can't move along. As a project manager, you might have addressed that in the steering group and nobody listened to you. You said, yeah, you're the project manager, we steer you. Wait. Yeah, but if that's one of the key reasons for what, this project might be in trouble, if somebody else transports that message. And the health check is a good structured and a professional, it's been perceived professional, a professional way to communicate those outcomes to the steering group, and especially in the example that I mentioned, if it affects them and if it's them. Yeah, it's better if somebody else takes this as a vehicle to communicate that. Any more questions? All right, then I'm coming back to the ACT slide and would like to thank you very much. Just 1 or 2 looked outside of the window, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
There's my card.
Okay.
I got in there one. Thanks very
A and T. So
Yes, I do.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks a lot.
And enjoy the afternoon and the rest of the conference.